Yeah. January 23rd, 1986. And we're reviewing the 4 stages, 4 phases, by which all creation, whether in the endless world, of which we have no comprehension as to how creation exists, inasmuch as we live in a finite frame of reference. So it is difficult for us to imagine creation in the world of the infinite, because creation represents phases, one different than the other, and not why would we call them 4 phases or 2 phases? Obviously, there seems to be some aspect, some characteristic that emerge differently from the first, and not it would be the first, it wouldn't be the second. But in any event, only because the tree is indicative of what went on within the seed, of which we do not have comprehension, while the seed remains within the frame of reference of finite. But for us, or for most of us, the seed, nevertheless, is symbolic of that area where potentiality seems to rule. There are different phases. As the tree develops, we observe different phases, and the obvious question arises, where do these different phases in the tree come from? And the answer is, it came from the seed. So obviously within the seed, while only in a potential state, nevertheless these different phases potentially existed until such time as they would become manifest, in this case the tree. However, these phases that we discuss even in the seed, lest we become confused, because even in the seed we are discussing something which is very finite. In the Ein Sof, obviously these different phases, wherever they appear, exist within the Ein Sof as well, because where did everything come from? From the Ein Sof. As above, so below. But if that is the case, then we learned in Volume 1 that Ein Sof represents the name. As little comprehension as we might have about the Ein Sof, nevertheless we understand there is no differences of phases. Everything there, whether there were 4 phases or there was 1 phase, differences, discernment, did not exist in the Ein Sof. That's why it is called Ein Sof. Infinite does not mean endless, in the sense that whatever number or whatever we might be referring to, we consider this as without numbers. But that again, the fact that we even think in terms of numbers, we're thinking of finite. So, infinite, from a Kabbalistic point of view, refers to the aspect of no discernment, no differences. While differences exist, they are not considered differences. One does not appear to be different from the other in the Ein Sof. But only because we observe differences from the Ein Sof, from the Tzimtzum onward, we have to assume that there also existed within the Ein Sof differences. These are the differences that Rabbi Ashlag, through the Ari, is attempting to clarify for us. But again, never make any mistakes that within the Ein Sof, these differences while they existed, did not occur. And that is the aspect of not understanding the Ein Sof. So we are considering these four aspects, which is and contains the rules of evolution, wherever they may appear. Wherever they may appear. Whether in the mind, whether in a bush, in a cup, in water, wherever they may appear, everything must follow this law and principle of cause and effect, which is directly related to the four phases. Now these four phases, two of which we touched upon at the last session. The first one was Chochmah. That's been fully clarified. And now we came to the stage of Binah, intelligence, an understanding. Understanding. And from what has already been explained, the energy intelligent thought of Binah was Ahavat Chesed, to share, while essentially Binah is a vessel. It emanates from the Yesh Me'ayin, and as a vessel, its internal energy intelligence, whether in a potential state or active state, nevertheless, will always remain within a frame called vessel. That will never change. While the initial thought might become manifest differently. For example, I want to receive, but I want to receive for the sake of sharing. We not only have two aspects of the same thing, but we have two diametrically different and in opposition to each other of two concepts. I want to receive for the sake of sharing. Do you want to receive or do you want to share? Do you want to do both? Yes, I want to do both. But the fact that I have now made a decision to share does not change the cause that preceded this manifestation of sharing. Because without receiving, I cannot share. So this always remains the rule of the vessel. No matter how the vessel ultimately becomes manifest, even if it becomes manifest as a positron from an electron, being a positron or being now a positive energy intelligent thought, it did not change from its initial and essential state of desire to receive. Electron is desire to receive. So Binah, in spite of its new intent now to become aligned and have a greater affinity with the light, which is the desire to share, nevertheless we should never forget that the aspect of Binah is essentially a vessel. But its thought is to transform the manifestation of this essential thought, desire to receive, to one of sharing. This is in opposition, or shall we not say opposition, but this is the paradox. It is not similar, and never will be similar, or exactly similar, to the light, which has no characteristic of a desire to receive. So Binah's, as a vessel's intelligent thought, was transformed into one of sharing, to seek an affinity with the light. Now obviously, Binah, this intelligent thought of desire to share, to become manifest, must find a vessel as herself, as she was to the original light. She must also seek out and find a vessel that could make manifest her newly born desire to share. And inasmuch as at that point, not in time, but at that point in the stage of evolution, there was no vessel, because the light, being all-inclusive, having no lack, and consequently having no desire to receive, could not act as a suitable vessel for this new transformation of Binah in its intent to share. So there is Binah with a very pure thought in sharing, but not having the opportunity to make manifest this share. So there was only one other avenue that Binah could pursue. And that was, if she was truly intent, and that is Binah, there is no fraud involved in Ein Sof, obviously. And inasmuch as her intent was now to create a frame in which she is completely similar to the energy intelligent thought of the light, she saw no other avenue but to cancel out her essential thought activity, which was the vessel, by saying, no light. When there was no light, there was no vessel. Because the only way the vessel takes on a characteristic of vessel is when something is contained within the vessel. But if the vessel is not active, it does not and never will accept something within the vessel. And again, we should not be limited to suddenly observing a cup and saying, this cup, whether it ever acts in the capacity of receiving the water or not, nevertheless remains a cup. How do we reconcile the physical frame of reference with this newly born concept referred to as Binah, by which she canceled out, she nullified herself as a vessel? We use the dramatic example of mikveh, where one immerses completely within the water, and essentially this is the purpose of mikveh. This body, for all intents and purposes now, is in no position to receive anything. Does not breathe, does not eat, does not function, does not make things manifest. It is completely enveloped in water. But yet the body is still there. But since we now observe a cup, not within the frame of normal reference, but we say this cup now represents intelligent thought. Hopefully this is where we're at after all of these sessions. And we do not treat this cup as it appears, because our physicists even tell us that the chair we're sitting on right now is only a chair because we decided that it was going to be a chair. But until that decision has been made, that chair does not exist. So we don't understand, but let's get ourselves out of that frame of reference that everything acts in the capacity of a vessel. Although I have not made a decision to make use of that vessel. So we have the physicists on whom we can rely, that when observing this cup no longer is considered to be a vessel. If there was no doubts any longer that this vessel would be receiving water, however that condition could be made, that this cup never again would receive water, as that chair will never be sat upon again, by which our physicists tell us it does not exist. The answer why it doesn't exist is because 90%, 99% of all entities exist only within a frame of reference of thought. There is nothing more. And this is what our physicists today believe. But this is what Rabbi Ashlag knew long before Einstein came out, even with his first new theory of relativity. That nothing is real in this unreal world as thought. It is the only real entity that causes action, that makes things manifest. Therefore, returning to Binah, Binah can cancel out, she thought, her essence by the mere transformation of this desire to receive, which was not an active desire to receive in wisdom, but acted as the vessel to contain the light, when she came upon the decision to transform her thought intelligence from one of receiving to one of sharing, she canceled out her essence.
She thought she did, but she really didn't.
At that moment, she did.
She did.
Absolutely.
The process of thought.
In the process of thought, because is there more than thought in this cup? Is there more than thought in the chair? The reason the chair gathers all of the atoms together to permit me to sit down rather than fall through the, through the chair, is because the wood, and that is the capacity of the wood. The wood has connected with its immediate environment, called the atoms, and said, look, I'd like you to assist me in creating a chair. It is only when the individual who's going to sit on that chair instructs the wood to act as a shliach, as a messenger, in communicating with the atoms. If this is the way we can kind of draw the picture of what's going on. So nothing exists in our universe, and certainly in all of the prior universes, whether physical and metaphysical, nothing exists but in a frame of reference called thought.
If the chair hasn't a thinking intelligence, and we have a thinking intelligence, we are thinking intelligence, we decide if the chair is there or not, is what the scientist says, and the Kabbalist agrees. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Does the chair also decide if we exist?
The chair...
Because until we sit on the chair, we don't exist for the chair.
We do exist.
Not to the chair.
Even to the chair.
So why are we different than the chair?
But the chair is only in a potential state of thought. So it does not exist, you mean, as a physical form of a chair, but your frame of reference of a chair is only the physical form. But remember, before this chair becomes formed, all of the intelligences that go into making this chair, which is 90% or 99%, takes place before. It's like we once described a window pane. If I raise a rock and it is my intent to shatter that window pane begins to shatter long before the rock reaches it. So you can't leave.
But why doesn't our physicalness not exist until the chair decides that we're going to sit on it?
We are in position, and only man is in position, like the Zohar says, and I don't want to get into that point because we'll divert too far away from the point. All creation was created in the 7 days, but there was no activity. It was in a total motionless state. Only when man appeared and he began calling things by their names, this animal by that name and this plant by that name, says the Zohar what the secret, the mystery of that verse, which is verse 2, is all about, is that man was placed in the universe to act as master of the universe. And all animals, as the Zohar says, feared Adam. We discussed this in one of the 10 plagues. There was this multitude of animals that came and caused havoc amongst the Egyptians, but feared the Israelites. Because the Israelites were being placed back into the position of master of the universe. That was the Exodus. That was all the Exodus was about. That man no longer would be a slave, meaning he no longer was connected to the 1% of the physical universe, but rather to the thing that controls this universe, which is energy, thought, intelligence. And that's what Adam did when he referred to, and he called, so says the verse, each entity of existence, of creation, by its name. He, and he alone, commanded the entities now to become manifest. There was no chair, there was no animal. How could there be how could there not be an animal? And then, how did the animal come? And what did the Creator create? He created the total 99% thought intelligence, like the DNA. See, today it's so easy to learn Kabbalah because I don't have to answer for anybody. How could a DNA, which we can't even see, contain all of the characteristics of this future individual? So all that was required of Adam was to control the DNA. He didn't have to control the animal as we see it today, but that little dot called DNA of the cow, which is only a manifestation of the real 90%, which is only a thought intelligence. Even that is only 1%. And he controlled that. He controlled thought intelligence. Once you reach, you visualize that state. Don't we control people? Everyone knows that people can control people. Those with a greater influence over people control people. So if that's where it's at, and we forget that maybe it's not the body that controls, it's not the physical world that controls the metaphysical world, we have no problems. It's not far out anymore. It's very real for us. What we've done is kind of focused everything we observe, but from another perspective. Not from the ones we've been brought up with, not with the ideas that we were taught in school, but from a new perspective.
So when Adam called, for example, the name, whatever way he did, of an animal, the animal became physical.
That's right.
That's right.
Is that a problem?
Was there a potential?
It was in a potential
Very
state.
statistical, though. I mean,
What's it?
The thought is very
Only
statistical
today
on
it
all
is.
level.
Only today.
Meaning, no, I mean that we are it.
That's right. Or that man is so, again, it maybe is the center of the universe. So, this was the primary thought of Binah. And this is what Binah is about. Where there is a desire on the part of a negative energy intelligent thought called desire to receive, is transformed to one of sharing, but total sharing. No bluffing here, no make-believe, no pretending, no pretense. It absolutely, you see, this is our problem. The criminal always goes free, the thief goes free, the bad person, the evil person gets away with everything. Who observed it that way? Who makes those observations? The blind? And we are blind because we see with 5%, so maybe there's 90% going on, which might even indicate a very balanced and ordered and structured universe. It happens in the heavens where man hasn't touched it yet, right? Maybe it happens down here too. And maybe what we observe in the way of chaos and disorder may be an illusion for those who can only see illusion. So everyone who has troubles from a Kabbalistic point of view, those troubles might be only illusionary. But everyone now goes back into his own little shell and says, but wait a second, I know I have a problem. I have, God forbid, a terminal problem in my family. What are we trying to? Someone trying to convince me here. You see how we've gone the pendulum? I mean, here we're so convinced that everything is really thought. Even the scientists tell us, thought. Don't think anything but thought. Now what are you talking about? But look, realistically, my grandmother is dying of cancer. Are you telling me, and she's suffering, are you telling me she doesn't suffer? And the answer is, of course she's suffering. She is suffering. But that contradicts everything we've just said for the last 10 minutes, doesn't it? This is the problem of why, for most people, we can achieve a state of awareness and fall down, because fortunately or unfortunately, I say fortunately because without the physical world, we cannot achieve the objective. So we must have the physical structure of the universe to achieve the removal of bread of shame. But at the same time, that doesn't preclude that we cannot observe this physical universe from another perspective. And so we're not fully loaded down each day with troubles and more troubles and more troubles. Does that mean to ignore, and that's the way you remove yourself? No. We're not talking about someone shutting himself off from reality, so to speak. And, well, everyone is healthy. There are no wars. There is no evil in the world. Everything is great. That was actually the 60s. But that's dealing, and they dealt with on the level of physical existence. On that level, there is chaos, there is disorder, there is evil. However, that represents only 1% of reality. So there is still 99%. Now, why are we so affected by 1% as opposed to the other 99%? And that is because we're not aware of the 99%, and no one will ever convince anyone that if I was 99% happy most of the time, that I would be unhappy. If you're happy 99% of the time, and 1%, would you consider that an unhappy state of affairs? Or a continuum of unhappiness? Obviously not. So I'm merely raising, when we leave the session, and we get hung up and caught up again into that world, we again lose sight of reality. And we're trying to hold on. This little study gives us a little straw we can hang on to in maintaining even sanity to some extent.
Makes a big difference.
All right. So, Binah, with this thought of transforming its essence, called the vessel, the desire to receive, to one of imparting, by its mere thought, to accomplish the desire, to accomplish a new state of thought, called desire to receive, it canceled out itself as a vessel. It canceled itself out as a vessel.